the early 80s, because from 67 to 77 I was in Mrs. Gandhi's government. So it was only after that that I felt that I should write this novel, because I had a story going around in my mind and I wanted to get it onto onto a book. Now this novel has a very interesting publishing history. It was published first by P.C. Lal, Writer's Workshop. Anybody who comes from Calcutta will have known of the Writer's Workshop. He was a man, P. Lal, P. Lal, who encouraged such a lot of people. So P. Lal was a good friend, so he published it first. Then later, I think in 1985 or 90, Sterling Publishers published it. Then as time went on, the name changed from the Mountain of Shiva to the Temple of Shiva. This, of course, is the Temple of Shiva. As everybody will recognize, this is the Shankaracharya mountain, at the foot of whom I live in Kashmir. And then Parchment Publications have brought out the third, the single standalone edition, which is still in the shops, called the Temple of Shiva. And finally, Mala Thapar comes along and says she wants to write a series sequel to this. I said, I don't know how somebody can write a sequel to my novel, but nonetheless, she has written something. Now let me tell you, there are four main characters in the novel. I'll tell you without giving the story away. There's Ashok, who's the protagonist. Maybe he was my alter ego, what I would have been had I not been born where I was. Because they say that in the first novel, the main person is always the alter ego. So Ashok is there. Then there's Ramesh and Sheila, a newly wedded couple who were going up to Kashmir on their honeymoon. And then there's Maharaj. Now Maharaj plays a very important role in this novel. Because Maharaj is the combination of two people whom I actually knew, both Englishmen, Sri Krishna Prem and Sri Madhava Ashish. Both of them lived in the ashram in Mirtola, which is beyond Almora. They lived there for many, many years. So the Maharaj that I have discussed in the novel is a combination of those two. And what I've tried to do is, apart from telling the story, I've tried to bring in some of the teachings of Maharaj also. So that, somebody might be able to get some. I want to give you a couple of examples of those. Let me see if I can find them. The first, for example, Maharaj is talking. I said that all energies must be harnessed for the quest if it is really to be seriously pursued. If one wants to cross to the other bank of a lake, one has to embark on the crossing. Merely standing on the shore and arguing or speculating about how deep the lake is or how long it will take to cross will not bring us an inch nearer the goal. As the Upanishads say, awake, arise and stop not till the goal is reached. Our whole existence is a pilgrimage of the individual soul towards the great goal that shines in glory, the light of lights, the power which shining illumines all that exists in the universe. To doubt its existence is 1,000 times more absurd than to doubt the existence of the sun. This is one of his things. Then he says, the spiritual path is not an easy one. It is sharp and dangerous. Kshurasya dhara nishita durtaya. As the Upanishads say, like unto a razor's edge. I don't know whether any of you have read Somerset Maugham's novel, The Razor's Edge. That is based on this Kathopanishad thing about the razor's edge. Essentially, it involves totally transcending one's lower ego, and that is where the fear arises. The fear of the ego, that in the new order it will no longer be able to continue its willful and despotic dominion and will have to bow before the greater truth and power of the higher self. Therefore it is afraid, as creatures of darkness are afraid to enter the pure and blinding light of the sun. And finally, this is important. My dear boy, for us, there is no distinction between the various facets of life or neat compartments into which spiritual and other problems are placed. Life is essentially a unity and must be viewed as such. There is and can be no personal problem that is unconnected with spirituality. In other words, Ashok went to him with a personal problem and said, I don't know whether you would be interested. He said, look, for us there is no distinction between the spiritual and the personal. Every personal problem also must have a spiritual dimension. Now these are the sort of teachings that I've tried to put into this book. While it tells the story of Kashmir, because that's the place I know best, it's based on the mountain where I live. This was pre-terrorist Kashmir, not the Kashmir that people have heard of bombs and guns and so on. Pre-terrorist Kashmir, when it was very tranquil and very peaceful, and this story is set at that time. It was made into a serial also, called Talash. एक सीरियल बनी थी इसकी 4-5-7 thing. अब किसी को somebody should make a movie out of it, because I think it is a story that deserves to be told, and it can now be shot in Kashmir, in situ, on the site where the story is placed. There is a visit to Pahalgam, there is a visit to Martand, there is a visit to Gulmarg. All of that has come into this book. Obviously, because those are the places that I knew best. And I've tried to put it in as realistically as I can into what is essentially, it's a romance also, but it's a spiritual quest, basically. There's a romantic element, there's a romantic triangle, and there's a spiritual element ultimately. So, the temple of Shiva is ultimately about Shiva, because Shiva is the all-pervasive divinity that we worship, and therefore the temple also must be all-inclusive and not compartmentalized. So I have tried to convey my own personal philosophy also, and through Maharaj's words, I try to convey their philosophy, from which I have learned such a great deal. So these are just a few opening remarks I want to make. Maybe you should take over now, Mother. Then she said she wanted to write a sequel. So she's written, in fact, 2 sequels. One is called, what are they called, the 2 ones? Celestial Infatuation, and the other is The Presence. So she's written 2 sequels in her own way, taking characters from the novel. You see, in my novel, Maharaj and Ashok, they reach their goal, so they are no longer there. But Sheila and Ashok are still up in the air. So she's taken Sheila, mainly, and also Ashok, and tried to bring their story up to the end. So now you go ahead, Mana, and tell them what you think about this.
Firstly, I'll read a bit. The Temple of Shiva by Karan Singh ji. Mike. Thank you. I'm audible, right? Okay. As I read The Temple of Shiva by Karan Singh ji, words came like leaves to a tree. They blossomed into a novel. So this writing is about understanding the yearning for a soulful relationship. It is fiction and not quite. Any resemblance to real-life characters is purely coincidental. I'm going to read a little in the beginning. The Temple of Shiva by Dr. Karan Singh ji became both a motivator and a temple of understanding of human relations for me. As I turned the pages, I found myself more engaged. It seemed familiar and written from the heart. However, I felt the need to represent the woman's point of view and her stance. to bring to the surface the emotions left in the survivors after Ashok had gone. This too was an understanding of human nature, affection, and engagement. The word celestial came into the picture as it is central to the novel. It is the yearning of the human heart for love. When love becomes a longing, what happens? You'll read on. The triage in this love story revolves around its three themes. The three themes are human and divine love, the path to self-realization, and its three characters, Ashok, Ramesh, and Sheila. Welcome to the journey. So, what basically, I'll read little excerpts which will make you wonder, because what happens is in the world today, we take everything for granted, and love has changed many colors and has gone through many phases. So the belief in it has already dropped diametrically. So what we need to, I felt personally that we need to reinforce the value of love. To me, it's a value, because anything done with love, whether you're cooking a meal or you're greeting somebody, brings results, positive results. That's my conception. So with that conception, I have viewed various characters. So there's no judgmental attitude here. It's all conditioning of different people with different patterns. So I'm going to read some excerpts from you. It's a three-dimensional story. Three is a very relevant number in my life. It's a mystical number, but everything happens in threes. So three characters, three dimensions, three themes, three tries to get everything together in this print, ultimately a trilogy. So that's how it is. The three characters I've told you, symbolism in the novel. The novel is philosophical and poetical. Philosophical because I find that there's a philosophy that each of the characters is following, whether he's consciously doing it or unconsciously doing it. For example, Sheila is doing her duty in an arranged marriage of bringing her children up and looking after the husband. The husband is doing his duty. It's an arranged marriage. And then Ashok is doing his duty. So while doing their duty, they're also interacting and relating with each other. That is the third dimension of the novel. Then it speaks about the connection between the human and the divine. Very often we forget. We leave the divine alone or we leave the human alone. There are two sets, either the monks or the general public. But I've tried to show the interconnectivity between the two. So love is not separated, the human from the divine or the divine from the human. It's part of the same thread. It's how we view it. That's done. Then interpretation of the words celestial and infatuation. Now, celestial is a huge loaded word. Sacred, divine, name it. But celestial, as I have taken it, is something which is pure. Pure. It's not adulterated by materialism, by dogma, by judgment, or whatever. So celestial to me is pure. Then presence. What's the presence apply in the third part of the story? Now what happens is when people go away, like Ashok went away, when they leave the body, I always feel that they are still present in their spirit, in their memory or in your heart in some form or the other. And they move us. We don't realize it. So in this story, we've shown how Ashok really is a presence in Sheila's life, even after departure. So he motivates her to find her own path, which was writing, and to find her own space. So time and space are two important things which have been crossed over. And in that crossing over, the threads of this novel are woven through everyday details of looking after the children, of going to write, to publish, meeting people. And it's set in an Air Force and Army backdrop. Like the man has to work, so he's working for the services, defense services. The wife is a defense services wife. So what does it take? Everything looks very glorious from outside, but what is the reality? So I'm a reality digger a bit because I just need to know what is what. So that's what brings out the truth and reality. And that's the driving force for each of the three characters. Ashok seeks reality in love through adopting his alter self. Sheila does the same in finding herself through writing. What does Ramesh do? So I'm going to read you some parts of it. Could you bear with me? 53. I'm sorry, I should have marked this before, but life has been so rushed of late. Yeah. But you have.
Your novel or my novel?
That's my novel.
Okay.
From my novel. So, but you have just come. Why the rush back? Ramesh was livid with rage and doubt. He was sure now that there was someone else, someone Sheila had not told him about, and he made up his mind to find out who it was. He watched her closely, even initiated love, but Sheila was not interested. Her indifference further strengthened his beliefs. Okay, let's go together. You can write and I'll play golf. What? The words slipped out before she could hold them. Why is it so bothersome or repugnant? He asked. Neither, but no. Her answer was firm. This had to be done quietly, away from the eyes and knowledge of anyone. She needed her space to complete her novel. The magic would go otherwise, the hour of creativity stray, and she would be like a dog on a leash. A week passed in formalities and social how are yous. The glitter and small talk of society ceased to engage her. This is where I'm going to stop. So, what happens is that there is a difference when you are shifting stance in life, I find, whether it's women or men, they tend not to come together but go apart in their thinking. But as long as they find themselves, it was another passage of life, a turn. But was it the right hand turn? Would it take her away from her family? And women being very family oriented, whether it's east or west. So, this aspect of the woman I've brought in, and I've written a poem called Ko Wadi. It's a French poem which relates to this. It says, as the dealer tagged my paintings and put them up for sale, I got a glimpse of an old self being left behind. The rain began to fog the windscreen. This is a true life story, actually. It's set in Quebec City. Yes. I stopped at a red light. There was this older couple crossing the street. This was Quebec City. There was love everywhere. For some reason, my heart filled with delight. Despite the wipers, the windscreen didn't clear. It was my cheek I had to wipe. And get on the highway and drive, to turn the radio and hear the singer claim, life is a longing, keep jogging, you'll get there. When I dream, I sometimes scream at the absurdity of the mist that clouds the dream. Chasing rainbows as a child, the habit has not died. Reaching for the skies, my time flies. Go Wadi, said the voice. Go Wadi means whither goes thou? Where are you going? The music kept drumming, the hail pelting. It was my turn. Where was I turning? Sometimes there are no right turns. And the voice repeating like a soundscape, go Wadi, go Wadi, go Wadi. So this is a theme that she's finding herself and saying, where are you going, where are you going, where are you going? So the metaphor of the couple came alive. It resonated with life's highway. Sometimes one cannot use the reverse gear. That's the bottom line with women in arranged marriages. You can't say, oh, you turn around, let's go back. So with most people. So that's one. And there's...
I must tell you, I've also put in some songs.
Yes.
One is a translation of वो हिंदी songs. दिल की तमन्ना थी मस्ती में मंजिल यूं भी दूर उतरते अपना भी कोई साथी होता हम भी बहकते चलते चलते साथी मिला यूं तो मगर रास्ते में था चांदी का नगर चांदी की नगरी भाई उसे हम रह गए आंखें मलते मलते. It's a very nice song. उसका मैंने ट्रांसलेशन इंग्लिश में किया है. यादों की धूल हाथों में है दिल की बहराने में चलते चलते थक गया राही चलते. बट इट्स ए वेरी सैड सॉन्ग, तो वो मैंने इसमें डाला. और एक मेरा डोगरी गाना है जिसका मैंने ट्रांसलेट किया है वो भी, तो मैं वो गाने भी इसमें डाल दिए हैं मैंने ट्रांसलेट करके इंग्लिश में. No, I haven't
written
translated from French, I'm afraid.
She did.
You translated from French.
I have done the Urdu one also.
Namaskar.
Lakire. Now that Dr. Saab started this, I'm going to share this lakire with you. It says, आपके हाथों की लकीरों में कहीं हमारा जिक्र ज़रूर होगा. एक इशारे पर हम आप के कहने पे चले आते हैं. ये मुकद्दर है या एक खूबसूरत नज़म जो कलम से नहीं दिल की स्याही से लिखी गई. वक्त ही बताएगा कब, कहाँ और क्यों लिखी गई. फ़िलहाल तो लब थरथराते हैं और धुंध की तरह हमें घेर लेते हैं. खुश नसीब मुस्कुराहट आपके लबों की एक लकीर है जो दिल में घर कर लेती है. पता नहीं ये हाथों की या तकदीर की लकीर है जो बिन बरसात तन मन को भिगाती चली जाती है. Since when did you begin writing in Urdu? Ramesh asked. This part of the film. You know, I didn't want to make it all English because this multiculturalism is the in thing these today. So everybody is, we must not forget, I personally tell my students also, not forget our own language. In Urdu, I'm very fond of Urdu shairi, poetry, and English too. So this is, and the facets of the presence, this is what some people ask. What is the presence about? So I'm just going to tell you what the presence is about. Writing was so much fun, this book. It was just 3-layered. It's here.
आप लोगों ने किताब ही नहीं पढ़ी तो सवाल क्या पूछेंगे आप? सवाल का समय रखा हुआ है.
At the beginning, in our beginning, in our end is our beginning, and in our beginning is our end, as T.S. Eliot says. तो उस पे हमने ये एक छोटा सा नज़्म लिखा था. Free from marriage and celibacy, attuned to the inner workings of consciousness, you catch butterflies knowing they'll escape you. You love those who can or cannot love you back, and say, love is not in receiving but in giving. An enigma to many who pursue it, with a passion known to the monk in search of a celestial vision, to release himself from earthly bonds. But can he? Does he when the bond is heavenly roped and the threads are eternally bound? One may say, how do you know that? My answer will be, turn inwards to the being there, who I don't question, because I know in faith and trust in love. So that encapsulates the entire realm of human and divine love. So I am very fascinated. Like when I was young, I used to read love stories, but they were like all good and bad things. Everything happiness at the end. I liked happy endings. I didn't like sad endings. So I thought happiness can be manufactured also. Happiness doesn't have to just be coincidence. And how do we manufacture that happiness in our lives? Through our stories. And so I wrote this. And exactly in that frame of mind.
मेरी नॉवल पढ़ोगे तो आखिरी पेज पे सारा क्लैरिटी होगी.
Let's read that.
याद रखना. नहीं आई वो वी शुड टेल द स्टोरी. आखिरी पेज तक पढ़िए तो आपको दिखेगा आखिरी पेज में जो उसका अंतिम भविष्य होगा वो है. So I have tried to make it a very interesting story, which can be read at 2 levels. It can be read at the normal level as a sort of a social story generally, or it can be read at a spiritual level. दोनों चीज़ें इकट्ठी करी हैं मैंने कि अपने लेवल पर भी कहानी है, लेकिन जो ऊपर जाने की चेष्टा है अशोक की वो भी इसमें है. और वो बड़ा ज़रूरी है क्योंकि दुनियावी तो आदमी चलते रहते हैं, लेकिन अंत में कोई के ऊपर जाने की भी कोशिश करनी चाहिए. और मैं तो 94 वर्ष का हो गया हूँ, तो मुझे तो कोशिश बड़ी देर से कर रहा हूँ मैं लेकिन अभी तक मैं कहीं पहुँचा नहीं हूँ. आई मस्ट एडमिट. लोगों को गलत फहमी है कि मैं बहुत पहुँचा हुआ हूँ, लेकिन मैं पहुँचा हूँ नहीं. लेकिन अगर लोगों को गलत फहमी है तो होनी दो, मैं क्यों ना करूँ उनको. है कि नहीं ठीक? हाँ. नहीं नहीं, वो तो खैर ऐसा है, लोग मुझे पूछते हैं जी आपका सीक्रेट वेपन क्या है। मैं कि मेरा सीक्रेट वेपन तो ये है, ओम नमः शिवाय, भगवान शंकर की कृपा है, और कोई सीक्रेट वेपन नहीं है। दैट इज माई सीक्रेट वेपन।
So that's why we say आपको गलत फहमी, लोगों को कोई गलत
नहीं नहीं
highly evolved person and everybody sitting here will agree with you.
नहीं नहीं, और लोग कहते हैं आप खाते क्या हैं, मैं खाता क्या हूँ, हम तो जो लोग खाते हैं वही खाता हूँ, कोई ऐसी विशेष चीज़ तो खाता नहीं हूँ। हाँ चलिए।
अब अगर आप लोगों के हाथ में किताब होती है, लेकिन हम आपको ये जो what really I liked about his book is when he goes and he says, "Who are you?" You know, the beginning, the middle, and the end. It's a very cyclical thing that he says, "My name is Ashokananda. I'm here at my master's bidding." So we are all here at our master's bidding, but we don't realize it. You know, we are here because of a divine plan, and we are here to fulfill a purpose. Wherever we find ourselves, there is definitely a purpose. And he's put it in such a lyrical and a nice manner that it's very endearing to the heart. And he says, I'm here at my master's bidding, this is my name. And then in the end, you know, there's another piece when he's coming back to the temple and he's feeling a little faint, and another young monk helps him. And he says, there, that boy, that it's on the calendar, he points out, and his name was Shankar. So it's very dramatic. At the same time, it's very meaningful. So there are two things that I really liked in his novel, which I picked on and brought it to normal life. And these were this. He takes it from level 0 to level 10. So that ascent takes place in just 2-3 lines. And it happens at different stages of evolution of his life. So it's not that you're young and you're like hairy-faced. No, it evolves. The story evolves from youth to realization. So those elements of self-realization, which he finds in the novel with Sheila and with the Mahant, and when he goes back, which I picked up those pieces, and then when Ashok wants to go back, part of the novel, the presence is Ashok. And in that, slightly before that, he wants to go back and see what has happened to the people he's left behind. It's all very well. What happens to the monks? I grew up with the monks and the nuns. And I used to always wonder what kind of solitary lives they lead. I used to ask them, but they seemed quite happy. They went back home, but how is it that you don't want to go back and stay there? But I didn't want to. So it was a commitment, a sort of a commitment which Dr. Karan Singh has brought to light very clearly, because it's a sort of a discipline. So one can say that love is not discipline, but love is disciplined. So there are two ways. If you look and read questions and answers to yourself and reflect, you will find that your relationships will have a new meaning. That's all I can say. Because every relationship is meaningful. We think, oh, you don't discard a relationship because it's okay, this doesn't relate to me. But there is no me. What is the me? Is me the loving one, or is me the one who wants to take and not give back? So it makes you question your own self and say, who am I? How am I loving the other person? Like in the poem I read, it's unloving, but how am I loving the other person? Because of self-satisfaction or because of the other person thinking what their requirements are? So this novel, I've read many novels, but I've really, what came to me was not me speaking, it just flowed through, because there were so many arenas that could be explored. I could write a whole encyclopedia of novels on just this first novel, because there's so many trimmings that are left unanswered, little openings and gaps, which I tend to go into and find meaning and pull out the meaning from that. So these finds help me see my life, other people's lives, whether they be man-woman relationship or friends relationship or parental relationship. Like when Ashok goes back to meet his mother, and I really wanted to bring that woman's aspect of the mother-son relationship. And he goes back and his mother is so delighted. She can't just get over the fact that her son has come to see her. And when we grow up, sometimes we forget that. And I like the piece where Dr. Karan Singh says that he used to write to his mother in Hindi because she could read only Hindi. It took a lot of effort, but he did that. So all those little things that make a personality also make a novel. So a novel develops a personality, and that personality you can find yourself into. It's not just Ashok, Sheila, and Ramesh, it's we. Where do we find ourselves? Where are we merging? Where are we distracted? Where are we diverging? So all those things are very self-explanatory and relate to us. Am I right?
Yes. Well, let me. I quoted part of Sri Aurobindo's poem from him. तो अगर आप चाहें तो मैं poem recite कर दूं. It's called Who, W-H-O, Who. In the blue of the sky, in the green of the forest, whose is the hand that has painted the glow? When the winds were asleep in the womb of the ether, whose it roused them and bade them to blow? He's lost in the heart, in the cavern of nature. He's found in the brain where he builds up the thought. In the pattern and bloom of the flowers he is woven. In the luminous net of the stars he is caught. In the strength of a man, in the beauty of woman, in the laugh of a boy, in the blush of a girl, the hand that sent Jupiter spinning through heaven spends all its cunning to fashion a curl. These are his works and his ways and his shadows. But where is he then? By what name is he known? Is he Brahma or Vishnu, a man or a woman, bodied or bodiless, twin or alone? We have love for a boy who is dark and resplendent. A woman is lord of us, naked and fierce. We've seen him amuse on the snows of the mountain. We've watched him at work in the heart of the spheres. We will tell the whole world of his ways and his cunning. He is rapture of torture and passion and pain. He delights in our sorrow and drives us to weeping, then lures with his joy and his beauty again. All music is only the sound of his laughter. All beauty is the smile of his passionate bliss. Our lives are his heartbeats. Our raps are the bridal of Radha and Krishna. Our love is their kiss. He's strength that is loud in the blare of the trumpets, and he rides in the car and he strikes in the spears. He slays without stint and is full of compassion. He wars for the world in his ultimate years. In the sweep of the worlds, in the surge of the ages, ineffable, mighty, and pure, beyond the last pinnacle seat by the thinker, he is throned in his seats that forever endure. The master of man and his infinite lover is close to our hearts had we vision to see. We are blind with our pride and the pomp of our passions. We are bound in our thoughts where we hold ourselves free. It is he in the sun who is ageless and deathless, and into the midnight his shadow is thrown. When darkness was blind and engulfed within darkness, he was seated within it, immense and alone.
Wow, you remember such a long poem. Great memory, my God, this is amazing.
What was your age when you memorized this? Because it has to be at a very young age.
Not necessarily. I can still memorize 65 years old. मैंने कविताएं लिखी भी हैं, अंग्रेजी में लिखी हैं कविताएं. हिंदी में एक छोटी सी कविता लिखने की धृष्टता की मैंने, क्योंकि हिंदी मेरी मातृभाषा नहीं है. मेरी मातृभाषा डोगरी है, लेकिन हिंदी हमारी राष्ट्रभाषा होने के नाते मैंने छोटी सी कविता एक लिखी है हिंदी में. भगवान शंकर को ही वो हमारे इष्ट देव हैं. उसको शीर्षक है अनुरोध, रिक्वेस्ट. हे शिव शंकर महादेव, मार्कंडेय के रक्षक, त्रिपुरासुर के भक्षक, मेरे साथ क्या व्यवहार करोगे? हे शिव शंकर महादेव, मार्कंडेय के रक्षक, त्रिपुरासुर के भक्षक, मेरे साथ क्या व्यवहार करोगे? यदि भस्म करने का ही निर्णय हो तो भी मुझे कोई आपत्ति नहीं. यदि भस्म करने का ही निर्णय हो तो भी मुझे कोई आपत्ति नहीं. हाँ, एक अनुरोध अवश्य है, उसके बाद मेरी भस्म को अपने जिस्म पे लगा लीजिए.
Totally amazing. Can you please put your cell phones off? Thank you. This reminds me of the celestial joining with the human. And that is the most poignant part of life, when the celestial and the human join. And sometimes I feel the end is also a point like that. If you look at life with love and you're joining with the divine, that's the ultimate point of love. It's how you really view it. So is the birth. Though it starts with the cry, the human cry, why have I been born into this world? What am I going to see? But it happens. So, recognition. The three, four things that this book comes to force with. One is recognizing love. Second is uh, kind of living through it, relating, reflecting, then realizing it. And the last is, Mike. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just am not used to the mics. Okay. So then ultimately realization comes. Realization comes by recognition. I always feel. If you don't recognize or discern, how will you realize? And once realization comes, and the three people, all three realize, mind you, Ramesh too, though he's a typical defense services officer, but he realizes as the story moves on, the woman, his wife's needs and bent of mind and personality, time and space. Same as with Sheila. She realizes Ashok after he's gone, even before that. But what happens is, in India and elsewhere, when people are in love, they didn't used to be very exuberant and outspoken. So they kind of mellowed it and they made it into their own life stream and history. But today, it's a different world. It's a different world, yet not a different world. Not a different world because the theme is the same, the topic is the same, there are heartbreaks and there are heartmakes, they're still there. How we deal with them is the question. So this book answers that question. For example, similar to what Dr. Saab said, recognition precedes it with the following verse. In the silence of the evening, I hear you. Sheila says this. I know you're here, very near, but I can't touch you. You're a spirit. And when you acquire form, you see me, you feel me, but you can't touch me because now I am a spirit. Shiva sees Krishna's Leela and places the spirits in bodies, male and female. But do they recognize the one? The answers are in the quiver. The racing heart steps hasten to answer the call. The peace that cometh with the union is communion. Like the Christians take communion mostly, and we take, all of us have our own ways of worshipping and getting closer to the God. But getting closer to the God, I always wonder why people have to get away from the humans to get close to God. Because God is in the heart of every human. So to me, humanity is the only source, from a woman's point of view, Shulas, to go to God. I've asked the monks many times this question, why do you have to come to, and many of them leave also, to, the reason I feel is that it's a realization, that's where the realization, self-realization comes in. Because there's no perfection in this world anyway, whether you live in a monastery or you live in the outside world. The only difference is that sometimes people like to run away from their situations, and other times they want to face them. Sometimes they can't get away being so conditioned, and all of us are conditioned in some way or the other, patterned. And this is a love thing, story stream, that to break out of the pattern, which is just impossible. But people have done it. To have the courage, like St. Francis of Assisi, I'm mentioning him because I went there, saw his place and all. When he left, he was locked up by his parents. Only son, huge vineyards, living everything. What is happening? But he had this calling. He had this calling when he was called by a greater force. Same as like Shiva calling. And if he calls you, you cannot turn around and say no. You cannot blink your eyes and say, well, this doesn't exist. You cannot deny. No force of the world can be greater than a calling. But not everybody has a calling. But those who have a calling, I feel, are life changers and have been, whether they be prophets or saints or the unknown. Let's call it the unknown. There are a lot of people who are the unknown. They don't want to be in the limelight, but they are there, game changers. In our country too. And being silent, they help others motivate, like the presence in this book. The presence of Ashok helps Sheila finish her novel, takes her on a path, makes her feel secure. So all those things are very vital. For a woman, security is very vital. Same as with a man. But we don't realize it, we don't talk about it. What is security? Security is not material security. That's what I'm saying. You can have everything and you can leave it. Security is, yes, it's emotional, but that emotional comes from also cognitive understanding, reflection, spiritual, basically. Because we ignore the spirit many a time. We say, okay, this is all that there is. But the spirit is what really shines over everything, giving it some kind of a substance. Yet it has no substance. Life is full of corollaries and contradictions. So this is what I've tried to bring out in this little, not little, it tended to be a little more novel than a novel. Any opinions? How did you find it? How did you find my two?
How did I find your novel? Well, it's very interesting because it's a totally different perspective. From I was telling a story, I think Mala looked upon it more from the woman's point of view, from Sheila's point of view particularly, because the main character in her novels is Sheila, whereas in mine it is either Maharaj or Ashok. So maybe she brings a new dimension onto what I have written. I hope so, at least, because it will be for the critics to decide whether her novels are better than mine or whether her novels have improved mine or not. I don't know. That's why we had them published together. Separately ये छपी हुई है मेरी टेम्पल ऑफ शिवा जो है वो अलग मिल जाती है, मगर ये तीनों हमने इकट्ठी इसलिए रखी to see whether what is their impact with each other. It's a unique experiment, actually. It is an experiment because I don't recall anywhere else where there's a novel and sequels written by somebody else and published in the same book. But I agreed because I felt that she has taken the trouble to read my book, got some inspiration from it apparently, and has written what she feels is the logical extension of my novel. So she's taken some of those characters. Let me tell you a little about those English gurus. There was a brilliant Air Force pilot, Ronald Nixon, English. And he came out to Lucknow University, where the Vice Chancellor was Professor P.C. Chakravarti, बहुत वर्ष पहले. और उनकी पत्नी जो थी यशोदा माँ बहुत धार्मिक स्त्री थी. तो कृष्ण प्रेम फाउंड हिज गुरु इन यशोदा माँ. तो उन्होंने वो छोड़ के संन्यास ले लिया, यशोदा माँ ने भी संन्यास ले ली, और वो सारे घूमते रहे हिंदुस्तान में एक स्थान ढूंढने के लिए कि कहाँ बनाए मंदिर. तो अंत में उन्होंने ये मिर्तोला स्थान चुना जहाँ बहुत सुंदर एक राधा कृष्ण का मंदिर है. ये हमारे अल्मोड़ा से कोई आप समझिए 20-25 किलोमीटर आगे है. पनवा नौला करके जगह है, वहाँ से सड़क ऊपर जाती है. और वो वहाँ रहे, यशोदा माँ भी रही, फिर अंग्रेज़ एक दो और भी आए, एक प्रोफेसर आए जो मेडिकल थे वो गुजर गए, फिर उनके दूसरे शिष्य आए श्री माधवा आशीष. तो कृष्ण प्रेम और माधवा आशीष, कृष्ण प्रेम ने किताबें ऐसी अच्छी लिखी हुई हैं, द योगा ऑफ द भगवद गीता एंड द योगा ऑफ द कठोपनिषद. कठोपनिषद क्या किताब लिखी है कठोपनिषद के ऊपर, इस प्रकार की पुस्तक किसी ने लिखी नहीं है. यानी उनका अपना जो उसमें वो है. तो 2 पुस्तकें उन्होंने लिखी हैं, एक भगवद गीता पे, एक कठोपनिषद पे. और वहाँ वो रहते थे, मैं जाता था और शाम तक हम रात के 11-11 बजे तक बैठ के बातें करते थे. बहुत कुछ मैंने उनसे सीखा. मेरे 4 गुरु रह चुके हैं बाय द वे. शाक्त गुरु रहे हैं, वो कश्मीरी पंडित हैं, नाम नहीं लूँगा. वैष्णव गुरु रहे हैं, वो ये लोग थे दोनों. शैव गुरु रहे हैं, वो अमेरिकन हैं. हाँ. और सूफ़ी गुरु रहे हैं, वो उस्ताद विलायत ख़ान के जो बेटे हैं, उस्ताद इनायत ख़ान के बेटे विलायत ख़ान वो थे. तो 4 अलग अलग दिशाओं से मुझे, और चारों से मुझे गुरु मंत्र भी मिला है. इसलिए मुझे तो, मैं एक गुरु का आदमी नहीं हूँ. आनो भद्रा कृतो यंतु विश्वतः, जहाँ से अच्छे विचार आए अपना लेना चाहिए। तो एक भगवत कृपा मैं समझता हूँ कि चार चार गुरु मुझे मिले हैं, सब अलग अलग, एक वैष्णव है, एक शैव है, एक शाक्त है और एक सूफी है, और उनसे सबसे लाभ उठा रहा हूँ और प्रयत्न कर रहा हूँ। पहुँचा नहीं हूँ कहीं, दुर्भाग्य यही है लेकिन कोशिश करता हूँ, अब भी कोशिश करता चल रहा हूँ। आदमी को सारी उम्र कोशिश करते रहना चाहिए, पहुँचे ना पहुँचे भगवान के ऊपर मुनसर, लेकिन कभी ये नहीं बैठना चाहिए कि बस अब मेरा काम हो गया है, अब मैं रिलैक्स करूँगा। Anybody who retires and relaxes is going to go down, invariably. Mother of Aurobindo Ashram wrote, nothing is so dangerous as relaxation, because that means that you're not working on yourself. That doesn't mean that you be frenetic all the time, but you must keep working on yourself. Keep looking inwards. Keep trying to find the inner light, because the light is everywhere. लेकिन प्रकाश जो हमारे भीतर है, उस प्रकाश को प्राप्त करना जो है वो हमारा ध्येय है। क्यों पंडित जी, गलत कह रहा हूँ? इसलिए वो ध्येय है, वेदाहमितं पुरुषं महांतं आदित्यवर्णं तमसः परस्तात् तमेव विदित्वाति मृत्युमेति नान्यः पंथा विद्यते यनाय। उपनिषद, एक बात आपको बताऊं, सर्वोपरि हमारे जो पुस्तकें हैं हिंदुइज्म की, वो भगवत गीता नहीं है, उपनिषद है। उपनिषद श्रुति हैं, भगवत गीता फिर स्मृति में आ जाती है। हालांकि अपने आप को वो कहती है कि भगवत गीता से उपनिषद सु, कोई मानता नहीं है उसको, उनको उपनिषद है बहुत। भगवत गीता तो बड़ी अद्भुत है, उसमें सम्मिश्रण है बहुत सारे विचारों का। वो श्लोक है ना, सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोहदा गोपाल नंदन पारसो वत्स सुधीर भोक्ता दुग्धम गीता मृतम महत। If we look upon all the cows as the Upanishads, and the cowherd is Krishna, and Arjuna is the one who's drinking the milk, and the milk is the Gita, essence of the Gita. So it is a derivative text from the Upanishads, but of course with the added personality of Sri Krishna and so on. So मैं तो समझता हूँ कि ये अधिक से अधिक हमें पढ़ते रहना चाहिए और यथासंभव आगे बढ़ता रहना चाहिए जब तक चलते चले। आप बताइए कि आपकी क्या राय, किसी की कोई राय तो दीजिए।
हमें एक बात कहनी कि कितनी अद्भुत बात है जो उन्होंने कहा कि चलते रहना चाहिए चाहे गोल मिले ना मिले। तो I was 17 when I started publishing, writing stories. The first line जो हमने लिखी थी, I may never arrive, but the joy of travel will be mine. Because I didn't know what arriving was, and I still don't know what arriving is, because we haven't seen the end. But the joy of doing this was a pure joy. This book is a work of joy. I left everything. I had to go back to Canada. I put my ticket off. I had to do my job. I'm working there as a teacher. So I left that for some time. My daughter's there. But I was so intensely involved. Writing is like drinking. A person who's totally, alcoholic and needs a drink. Writing and art is like that. Even I paint also. Once I get into something, I just have to finish it, go with it, because it's coming from somewhere else. It's not just something you manufacture. It's many other people's lives that have been lived and you're just penning them down. I feel that way. And you're penning down so that people who cannot write or have not written may find the answers or somehow some strength and motivation in them. All right, not open the stage.
I think Eliot says it all as far as the journey is concerned. And the end of all our journeying will be to return from the place from where we started and know it for the first time. बहुत बड़ी बात है. End of all our journey will be to return to the place from where we started and know it for the first time. यानी कहीं जाना नहीं है, हमने वहीं से शुरू करना है, लेकिन हमें पहचानना है कि कहाँ से हमने शुरू किया. ये एलियट ने कहा. एलियट की जो कविताएं हैं वो उपनिषद से बहुत, वो दा 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 जो दम्यता दे, वो बृहदारण्य का उपनिषद का है, उससे वो अपना वेस्टलैंड जो प्रसिद्ध, सबसे प्रसिद्ध कविता है, वो समाप्त करते हैं बृहदारण्य उपनिषद से. So a lot of the European writers and poets were deeply influenced by Hinduism and by Vedanta. What is our time?
एक
Like 7 o'clock.
अभी हाँ एक ही जब आप बात कह रहे हैं, I'm just catching on to his thoughts. We like, why does this happen that our world is so caught up in me and you attitudes? Mera tera, mera. It's this, I must say this. Chapter 11 in this book, in Presence, says, we like the spider are caught in the web of our own creation. After 4 months, when I went back to Canada, outside my window, there was a huge spider's web. And the spider had taken all the pains to make it so fine. I didn't want to destroy it. I left it for 2 weeks. And I got a lot of motivation from that. So, this I've written, picked up from where Dr. Karan Singh is finished. It's getting late. You'll miss your bus. Hurry up, Ashokananda. Don't you know you're visiting friends today? Ashokananda woke up, rubbing his eyes. Maharaj had lately begun to patronize him like a close relative. Ashokananda sped to catch the bus, which would have left if he hadn't taken the time to dress and change. Seize the day he had learnt at Doon School. That's the only Latin he knew, carpe diem, and practice it ever so often. Then, as he moves on, he meets the people he's left behind, and they're still there for him, but he has not been there for them. So that gap he's trying to kind of somehow bridge, and he hopes and wins that Vish had connected and communicated with them. That essence I wanted to bring out too. What happens to the survivors when a person has left? And very seldom do people think what's happening to them. Right, when a person goes, like dies, for example, in the family, father goes or mother goes, we don't remember. They don't know, but we know how we miss them. So that gap filling is also a relationship of love. You know, if you love them, you follow their rules, you follow their dictum, whatever they said, and you still love them, carry on in the same vein. So that element is now departing. We are so caught up with our cell phones, with our life, which is so technology built, that we are losing that connection. Can love be technical? That's my next novel. Can technology replace love? If so, where are its arms and legs and feet and hugs? Can technology do that? So it's a robotic world that we are moving in.
अब आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस शुरू हो रही है, भगवान जाने कहाँ पहुँचाएगी हमें. ह्यूमन इंटेलिजेंस तो फेल हो गई है, अब आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस ही कुछ करे तो करे. But you know, this story begins and ends in Kashmir, but in between there's a South Indian yatra. Because I love South India. I love Thanjavur and Tiruvannamalai and Chidambaram and all those great South Shaiva temples in the south. So I take a yatra through that. Maharaj goes with Ashok and Madan, and they go to these various places which I have described. So I've put in a bit of South India also in a way to balance. It's not only Kashmir, but the rest of India also is important.
And that balance comes from Nataraj. The Nataraj you see here downstairs was presented by him and his dear wife. So that the figure of Nataraj balance, I really have a lot of value and respect for that, and that's where it comes
That
from.
was the trip where I discovered Nataraj. Nityavasane Nataraj Rayo Nanada Dhakkam Naupanchavaram Uddhartu Kaman Sanakadi Siddhan Hetat Vimarshe Shiva Sutra Jalam. So Nataraj की जो image है, I've been fascinated by it. मैंने नटराज के मंदिर जम्मू में बनाया है, मैंने पौंडीचेरी में बनाया है, मैंने अमेरिका में बनाया है. 3 नटराज के मंदिर मैंने बनाए हैं, एक से एक बढ़ के नटराज. यहाँ भी अगर आप एंट्री देखेंगे, वो नटराज मैंने और मेरी पत्नी ने, हमारा पर्सनल गिफ्ट था, क्योंकि ये मैंने ही बनाया है. ये जब मैं चेयरमैन था IIC का, तो ये एनेक्सी मैंने बनाई. तो मैंने कहा इसकी एक शर्त है कि पहले नटराज लोग दर्शन करें फिर आएँ. अब लोग देखें ना देखें वो दूसरी बात है. जिनकी दृष्टि होगी वो देखेंगे, जिनकी दृष्टि नहीं होगी उनको पता ही नहीं लगेगा क्या है. लेकिन नटराज रखे हैं वहाँ पाकर.
But you have a similar one in your temple also. That's slightly smaller.
Yes, that's a little smaller.
Smaller.
That's a little smaller.
Yeah.
I have one there.
So but don't worry about noticing. I have come here at least 100 times, and 100 times I've had the darshan.
And एक हमारे बीच में है ये संस्कृत स्कॉलर है जो लखनऊ से आए खास तौर से सुनने, तो उनको कुछ कहना था श्लोक में, तो आप प्लीज आए। ये हमारा या वहीं से बोले
यहाँ आके बोलेंगे, वहाँ बोलेंगे, कैसे
आप जैसी अनुमति देंगे।
जैसे आपकी इच्छा। आप ऊपर आ जाइए।
वर्णानामन्धसङ्घानां रसानां छन्दसामपि मङ्गलानां च कर्तारौ वन्दे वाणी विनायकौ वन्दे वाणी विनायकौ। पृथिव्याणि त्रीणि रत्नानि जलम अन्नम सुभाषितम। परमात्मा ने इस सृष्टि को जब रचना की तो सृष्टि की रचना के साथ जीव जंतुओं के लिए 3 रत्न बनाए, जलम अन्नम सुभाषितम। जल इस धरती का प्रथम रत्न है जो मनुष्य को हर प्रकार से क्लेश से मुक्ति देता है, आनंदित करता है। दूसरा है अन्न, अन्नम वै प्राणाः। अन्न का भोग करके मनुष्य पुष्ट होता है, स्वस्थ रहता है। और तीसरा रत्न जो है वो सुभाषित है, या डॉक्टर करण सिंह जैसा हमारे बीच में रत्न है। मैं अपने आराध्य श्री हनुमान जी महाराज से आपके चिरायु होने, आपके निरोग होने और आपकी सेवाएं हमारे देश को, हम सब भाइयों को और मिलती रहें, आपकी वाणी को सुनते रहें, इसके लिए हम उनसे प्रार्थना करते हैं अपने देशवासियों की ओर से और अपने हृदय से भी। लखनऊ से एक छोटा सा रिश्ता आपका रहा है। आप जब लखनऊ आए थे तो हम लखनऊ विश्वविद्यालय में नए नए आए थे, तो कश्मीर और काशी के विषय में आप सबको बताना चाहते हैं कि जितने संस्कृत की रचनाएं, जितने संस्कृत के ग्रंथ हैं, अधिकांश काशी और कश्मीर में उनका प्रणयन हुआ। कश्मीर वो जगह है जहाँ की हवाओं में संस्कृत का फील आता था। वहाँ कश्मीर में टहलने वाले व्यक्ति को संस्कृत के मंत्रों, संस्कृत के श्लोकों और वेदों की ऋचाओं की अनुभूति स्वतः हो जाया करती थी। आप उस धरती से हैं। और इससे भी एक बड़ी बात, अभी आप पहले अंग्रेजी में बोल रहे थे, फिर आपने हिंदी में अपनी कविता सुनाई। आपकी हिंदी की कविता सुन करके मुझे लग रहा था कि कोई नौजवान अपनी मिट्टी से जो प्रेम करता है, जो समर्पण देता है, वह भाव देखिए बैठे बैठे मुझे मिल रहा था। मैं निश्चित रूप से कहना चाहता हूं, और आपको इस पुस्तक का थोड़ा सा अध्ययन मैं कर पाया, ज़्यादा मुझे अवसर नहीं मिला, लेकिन जो पढ़ा तो मेरी जिज्ञासा जो है वो अग्नि की तरह प्रज्वलित हो गई। अब इसे मुझे कई बार पढ़ना पड़ेगा। लेकिन आप सबके समक्ष मैं एक वचन देता हूँ, एक आग्रह भी करता हूँ कि इस बार के प्रयागराज के महाकुंभ में मेरी पुस्तक जो सबसे अधिक लोगों ने पढ़ी, मांगी, ले गए, वो कठोपनिषद सार संग्रह है। कठोपनिषद एक ऐसा ग्रंथ, हमारे जो उपनिषदें हैं, अभी आपने कहा, इसमें कोई संदेह नहीं कि उपनिषदों का जो भाव है, उपनिषदों का जो मर्म है, उससे श्रेष्ठ कोई मर्म, मैं तो अल्पज्ञ हूं, कुछ आपके सामने बोलने का साहस कर रहा हूं, उससे श्रेष्ठ मर्म कहीं मिला ही नहीं आज तक जीवन में। कठोपनिषद में वो जो 3 प्रश्न करता है नचिकेता, अग्नि विद्या का जो प्रश्न है, आप समझिए पूरे जीवन के सभी प्रश्नों का उत्तर आपको केवल कठोपनिषद में मिल जाएगा। और मैं तो 89 में कश्मीर गया, मुझको बताया गया था, मेरे गुरुजी ने कहा था कि नंगे पांव कश्मीर जब पूरा घूम लोगे तब तुम्हारी पीएचडी पे मैं साइन करूंगा। तो हमने कहा गुरुजी नंगे पांव घूमने से क्या आशय है, मैं तो समझ नहीं पाया। तो उन्होंने कहा कि तुम्हारा ग्रंथ विक्रमांक देव चरितम का अनुशीलन जो है, उसके लेखक बिल्हड़ तो कश्मीर के ही थे। कल्हड़, बिल्हड़, जल्हड़, ये वो विभूतियां थी जिनको जितना आप पढ़ेंगे उतनी भूख बढ़ती चली जाएगी। मैं आपके लिए और माला जी के लिए, मैं रास्ते में आज सवेरे ही मैं आया हूँ, कल होली है। लखनऊ के लोग होली बड़े दिल से खेलते हैं, और खेलते क्या है, आपको पहले सराबोर कर देंगे, फिर खुद खेलेंगे। तो मैं सोच रहा था कि माला जी का कार्य, तो एक परिचय मैं आपका आदरणीय करण सिंह जी का देना चाहता हूं, जो मैंने पढ़ा है। मैं परम पूज्य देवरावा बाबा जी के साथ 8 वर्ष रहा मुझको सौभाग्य प्राप्त था उनकी सेवा करने का, और करपात्री जी महाराज के साथ भी मुझको रहने का सौभाग्य प्राप्त हुआ। उन्होंने बताया था कि भगवान कृष्ण के वंशज सांब थे और सांब को कुष्ठ रोग हो गया, तो कुष्ठ रोग को ठीक करने के लिए उन्होंने भगवान शिव की अर्चना की, भगवान शिव की आराधना की, और जब भगवान शिव प्रसन्न हुए, उनको आशीर्वाद दिया, तो उन्होंने पूछा कि क्या चाहते हो, तो सांब ने कहा कि मेरी वंशावली में एक व्यक्ति ऐसा जरूर हो जो लिखने पढ़ने का काम करता रहे और भारत को जगाता रहे। आप भगवान श्री कृष्ण की वंशावली के हैं, सांब की वंशावली के हैं, आपको उद्घाटित कर रहा हूं। ये परम पूज्य देवरावा बाबा जी ने प्रयाग की धरती पर इसका उद्घाटन किया था।
वैसे मैं रघुवंशी हूँ।
और हमारा सबका होना बहुत महत्वपूर्ण नहीं, हमारे जैसे लोग धरती पे आते रहेंगे, जाते रहेंगे। जितनी देर हम राष्ट्र की सेवा में कुछ कर लेते हैं, साहित्य की सेवा में कर लेते हैं, वो उतना समय हमारा राष्ट्र को अर्पित होता है। मैं माला जी को समझता हूँ कि जैसे मीरा जी ने भगवान कृष्ण की सेवा साधना में अपना जीवन दिया था, आप अपनी रचनाओं से जो समय दे रही हैं, हम आपको भी साधुवाद देते हैं। और मुझे अगर अनुमति देंगे तो मैं आज आप सबके समक्ष वचन दे रहा हूँ। मैं संस्कृत का लेखक हूँ, वेद पढ़ाता हूँ। मैं डॉक्टर करण सिंह जी पर और कश्मीर की उन परंपरा पर जो कि आज जिसका प्रयोग लगभग समाप्त है देश में, मुझको सौभाग्य, जो कि मैं डीफिल जब हुआ तो मैं कश्मीर पैदल चल के हुआ, तो जब मैं पैदल चलता था झोला टांग के किताबें ला दे, तो मुझे लगता था कभी ऐसा भी दिन आए कि कोई ऐसे व्यक्ति पर मुझको लिखने का अवसर भगवान दे, झेलम का आशीर्वाद मुझको मिल जाए। तो मैं एक पुस्तक संस्कृत में आप पर जरूर लिखना चाहूँगा। अब वो पुस्तक ऐसी हो जिसमें कश्मीर का परिचय हो और कश्मीर के बीज के रूप में हमारे आदरणीय डॉक्टर करण सिंह जी का परिचय हो।
हिंदी में नहीं लिखेंगे पंडित जी?
हिंदी तो उसकी बेटी ही है, संस्कृत की पुत्री जो है वो हिंदी है। और ये जो भारत की 22 भाषाएं हमारे संविधान में हैं, यही नहीं 3232 भाषाएं संस्कृत से पैदा हुई हैं। इसी विज्ञान भवन में डॉक्टर APJ कलाम ने मुझको अवसर दिया था, मैंने 5 दिन में 2 सत्रों में मैंने इसको सिद्ध किया था। तो हिंदी में लिखेंगे आप, आज आपका दिन है, आप जिस भाषा में कहेंगे उसमें लिख देंगे। संस्कृत, हिंदी, पाली में तो मैं लिखता हूँ, आप जिसमें अनुमति देंगे उसमें लिखूंगा, लेकिन कुछ आपके लिए लिखना चाहता हूँ और अपने कश्मीर के लिए लिखना चाहता हूँ। हमारे भारत का मुकुट है, हमारे शरीर में सौंदर्य तो हमारा मुकुट ही होता है। अगर कश्मीर सुंदर रहेगा तो हम अपने आप सुंदर दिखेंगे।
अभी तो मुकुट से भी हम कम हो गए, हम अब यूनियन टेरिटरी हो गए, हिमाचल और हरियाणा से भी कम हो गए। सब कहते हैं भारतवर्ष का मुकुट है, लेकिन अब देखिए क्या दशा हो गई मुकुट की। तो कृपा करके वो मुकुट फिर से दीजिए ना हमें।
वो मुकुट हम हर भारतवासी को मुकुट चाहिए, उसको खंडित मुकुट नहीं चाहिए। मतलब एक पीड़ा है कि हमारा कश्मीर जो है भारत का मुकुट है, भारत का अलंकरण है, तो उस अलंकरण को उसी स्वरूप में हमको मिलना चाहिए। आपका जो शीर्षक है इस पे हमने 2 शब्द मैडम से कहा था। जो ज्योतिष विद्या है उसमें उसके कई मानक हैं। तो जब प्रेम अपने मौलिक स्वरूप में लौटता है, माँ जब बच्चा पैदा करती है तो पहली बार जब प्रसव होता है तो माँ का स्वरूप दूसरा होता है, लेकिन जब माँ वृद्धा हो जाती है, चलने फिरने में अशक्त हो जाती है, बच्चे सब बड़े बड़े हो जाते हैं, तो उस समय माँ के नेत्रों का जो प्रेम अनुराग है, वह अनुराग माँ का सबसे अद्भुत अनुराग, जो एक नज़र केवल पुत्र को देख लेती है। केवल लेटी हुई बिस्तर पे जब उठ बैठ नहीं सकती, लेकिन एक दृष्टि जब पुत्र पे डाल देती है, अपनी संतान पे डाल देती है, तो माँ का वो अनुराग का जो स्वरूप है वो सर्वोत्तम है। उसके लिए एक अलग से विधान है, कभी अवसर मिलेगा तो मैं 3.5 घंटे का एक व्याख्यान बनाया है, उस पर कहूँगा माँ की सेवा, माँ की वाणी का। और हम इनको तो कश्मीर का पुत्र मानते हैं, जम्मू और कश्मीर के पुत्र हैं ये। उसी रूप में कोई रचना ऐसी आनी चाहिए जो पूरा भारत पढ़े। आपने जो अभी कहा, ये हम सब की पीड़ा है। मुकुट तो छोटा कैसे हो सकता है, उस तो विशाल होना चाहिए, आभामय होना चाहिए, महिमामय होना चाहिए। तो हम सबकी प्रार्थना भगवान शंकर सुनेंगे और पूर्ण होगी। हम आपके चिरायु दीर्घ।
पंडित जी, आश्चर्य ये है कि मैं पैदा कश्मीर में नहीं हुआ, मैं पैदा विदेश में हुआ, फ्रांस में हुआ, कान में हुआ। तो ये भी एक अद्भुत बात है कि मैं कहाँ पैदा हुआ। वो जन्मभूमि वो है और मातृभूमि ये है, अंतर है दोनों के बीच में। वो जन्मभूमि तो मेरी फ्रांस है भाई, और मातृभूमि भारतवर्ष है, ये दोनों बातें हैं। तो ऐसे ही बता रहा हूँ आपको, क्योंकि कई लोगों को आश्चर्य होता है। वो समझते हैं कि मैं कश्मीर के ही महलों में पैदा हुआ होऊंगा, लेकिन इत्तेफाक ऐसा हुआ कि विदेश में पैदा हो गया। तो वो भी एक अच्छी बात है। इसलिए मुझे फ्रेंच तो मैंने सीखी नहीं, आप तो फ्रेंच बोलती हैं सुना, लेकिन मैं फ्रेंच थोड़ी बहुत सीखी। लेकिन मैं गया हूँ, उस होटल में रहा हूँ पंडित जी जहाँ मैं पैदा हुआ था, और मैं और मेरी पत्नी उस कमरे में रहे जहाँ मैं पैदा हुआ था। क्योंकि वो कमरा जो था, मैं एक प्रसिद्ध बालक था, आई वॉज अ फेमस बेबी, तो लोगों को पता था रूम 318, 319, 320 इन द होटल मार्टिनेज इन कान। सो वी स्टेड इन द रूम वेयर आई वॉज बोर्न। इजंट दैट समथिंग?
ये और बड़े आनंद का विषय है, बहुत बड़ा सौभाग्य है। हाँ।
पंडित जी, एक सवाल है आपसे।
जी प्लीज।
ये आपने जो डाला हुआ है इसमें जय श्री राम लिखा है।
जी।
मैं आपको बताऊं, 1992 तक
जी
जब ये शुरू हुआ राम मंदिर का मूवमेंट,
जी जी
तब तक हम सिर्फ जय सिया राम सुनते थे, जय श्री राम कभी नहीं सुना था। उसके बाद जय सिया राम आपने गायब कर दिया और श्री राम आ गया। इसको समझाएंगे आप, ये क्या अच्छी बात है?
भैया ने जो सवाल किया है, जय सिया राम अब भी है और तब भी था। जब नहीं, हम इसकी व्याख्या करते, बहुत अच्छा सवाल है। जब उस श्री राम के मंदिर के निर्माण की जरूरत पड़ी, तो वो माँ सीता या माँ राधा तो हमारी श्री ही है ना, उनके अवतार हैं। तो श्री के बिना वो श्री राम मंदिर नहीं बन सकता था, इसलिए श्री राम करना पड़ा, और वो सिया राम ही है। तो जो श्री हैं, जब श्री बोलते हैं तो माँ का नाम लेते हैं, और मंदिर निर्माण के लिए श्री की आवश्यकता थी, इसलिए श्री राम किया गया।
अब मंदिर बन गया है और फिर से सिया राम पे
जय जय सीताराम। जय जय सीताराम। जी।
सिया के साथ कितना अन्याय हुआ था।
जी जी जी।
योगी जी का एक अखबार में मैंने पढ़ा कि 100 फुट की मूर्ति श्री राम की बना रहे हैं। मैंने उनको पत्र लिखा, मैंने कहा योगी जी कृपा करके 50 फुट राम की बनाइए, 50 फुट सीता जी की बनाइए। आप अयोध्या वाले फिर सीता को वनवास दे रहे हैं क्या? आगे ही आपने थोड़ा कम किया और सीता के साथ अन्याय जो हुआ था।
नहीं, माँ
इस बारे में मेरे बड़े वो हैं।
जी जी जी। माँ की तो उनसे बड़ी बननी चाहिए, राम से छोटी नहीं, क्योंकि सीता के बगैर राम का अस्तित्व तो था ही नहीं। धन्यवाद।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
जी, सीता के बगैर राम का अस्तित्व नहीं था।
हालांकि
मैं
सीता जी नहीं,
ये पुस्तक मैं आपके हाथों से चाहता हूँ, मुझे इनके हाथों से प्राप्त हो। नहीं, ये ऐसे नहीं, मैं भी एक लेखक हूँ, तो मैं,
आप लेखक होंगे जरूर पढ़ेंगे। क्या हस्ताक्षर करना चाहते हैं?
आपके हाथों से लेना चाहता हूँ बस।
नहीं, हाथ से लेना चाहते हैं जी, दस्तखत भी कर देंगे।
ये पेन
जिससे आपका पेन बेटर है। पेन निकला पिछला उठ निकाल दो। हाँ,
एक और छड्डा निकालिए।
नहीं निकलना है। हस्ताक्षर ठीक नहीं आ रहा है।
ये लीजिए आप।
नहीं ठीक है, हो गया। डेट आज क्या है? 13
आज 13/3/25।
देखिए शिव जी का मंदिर है आगे। यही मंदिर।
आप सबको प्रणाम निवेदित करता हूँ। सादरम नमः।
अच्छा जी, धन्यवाद। हाँ,
मैं डॉक्टर ओम प्रकाश शर्मा आपको प्रणाम करता हूँ। मैं देखता हूँ कि हिंदुस्तान में नहीं, पूरे विश्व में मेरे ख्याल से इस समय कोई एक लीजेंडरी, एक विजनरी, एक जिसने पूरा
ये ले लीजिए, सुनाई दे रही है आपकी बात।
जिसने पूरी दुनिया को देखा है, देखा नहीं जिया है, जिसके सामने भारत का नवनिर्माण हुआ है, आज़ादी हुई है भारत की, और भारत में एक नया जो भी कुछ हुआ है आप उसके प्रत्यक्षदर्शी रहे हैं। तो आप आगे आने वाली पीढ़ी के लिए भारत के जो नए नए लेखक हैं, निर्माता हैं, पॉलिटिशियन हैं, उनके लिए क्या संदेश देना चाहेंगे ताकि उनको एक प्रेरणा मिले?
संदेश तो पॉलिटिशियंस को पहला संदेश ये है कि कटु वचन मत बोल रे, घट घट मेरु तो साईं बसत है, कटु वचन मत बोल रे। क्या भाषा चल रही है आजकल राजनीति में, ये कोई शोभा देती है हमें भाषा भारतवर्ष को? गाली गलौज चल रहा है, पार्लियामेंट देखिए तो आदमी देख नहीं पाता है वहाँ क्या हंगामा हो रहा है। तो पहला तो मैं राजनीतिज्ञों को ये विनम्र प्रार्थना करूँगा कि कृपा करके अपने आप भाषा के ऊपर कुछ कंट्रोल रखिए और ये कटु वचन न बोलिए। युवा पीढ़ी को मेरा ये संदेश है, हिम्मत नहीं हारिए, क्योंकि चारों ओर भ्रष्टाचार, चारों ओर हाहाकार मची हुई है। तो युवा पीढ़ी अगर आशा छोड़ देगी तो देश आगे नहीं बढ़ सकता। तो युवा पीढ़ी के हृदय में जो ज्वाला है वो बलती रहनी चाहिए, और चाहे कितनी भी तकलीफ़ें हों, वो है न सर झुका के चलो, न मुंह छुपा के चलो, दुखों का दौर भी आए तो मुस्कुरा के चलो। ये मेरा संदेश है उनको पढ़िए।
बहुत बहुत सुंदर, बहुत सुंदर।
सब आगे दीजिए। हाँ, सॉरी, यू वांट टू आस्क समथिंग?
I want to ask two questions to both of you. Ashok has the autobiographical elements from your life. It looks like I have read the Temple of Shiva, but I think Sheila has her philosophy, her thoughts as a feminist writer,
Yes.
and you have your philosophy and metaphysics. You have spoken through Ashok's mouth.
I think that's true. I think that by and large that's true. That's why I said
Yes,
that
you said something.
perhaps she has brought a
Alter ego.
feminine element into the sequel.
Like this temple is of Shankaracharya, in the temple of Shiva, you have given the cover as South Indian temple.
No, I didn't.
That
give-
is no,
See,
in the
South
temple
Indian-
of Shiva.
This is the temple of Shiva.
No, the
Shankaracharya.
other by parchment publications.
पता नहीं उन्होंने क्या कवर
हाँ,
पे
they
रखा है,
have
लेकिन
given the cover
है
as-
तो यही टेम्पल।
This is a real temple.
This
No,
is the
the
actual
real
temple.
but they have given the South Indian temple. I have the book. I have the book.
इन्हीं के चरणों पे रहते हैं हम। We live in
Yes,
that.
no, same
mountain.
temple. I think I have it. Just show it.
ये आदि शंकराचार्य वाला है।
आदि शंकराचार्य वाला।
सर, आपकी एक अच्छी मेमोरी के संदर्भ में एक मैं आपको सवाल पूछना चाहता हूँ।
हाँ, बताइए।
आपने सर एक बार ये अच्छी बात कही थी कि नॉर्थ वेस्ट इंडिया में एक बार जोरोस्ट्रियनिज्म का प्रभाव पड़ गया था, इसीलिए परशुराम जी को अवतार बनाना पड़ा था। तो इसके बारे में मुझे कोई डिफरेंस नहीं मिला सर।
यहाँ बैठ के मैं साइन नहीं कर
तो कोई बात नहीं।
टेबल पे बैठ के साइन करूँ, बाहर नहीं कर पाएंगे। बेटे यहाँ साइन होता नहीं है।
बाहर बैठ के साइन करेंगे। Just speak up. Well, just come. बाहर बैठ के sign.
नमस्कार मैडम।
Yes.